It was a crisp autumn morning in Washington, D.C., as the world turned its attention to an international summit at the National Convention Center. Leaders from across the globe had gathered to discuss pivotal matters, and the event was to be headlined by then-President Donald Trump. Security was predictably tight, with Secret Service agents lining the perimeter and carefully monitoring the growing crowd. Among the crowd stood 19-year-old Daniel Harper, a university dropout whose life had unraveled in ways he never imagined. Daniel's clothes were worn and mismatched, his once bright eyes dulled by exhaustion and despair. For months, he had been living out of a small duffel bag, sleeping on subway benches and skipping meals to afford the little he could send to support his ailing mother. His mother, confined to a nursing home after a debilitating stroke, depended entirely on Daniel to cover her mounting medical bills. Daniel's own struggles were compounded by obsessive-compulsive disorder, a condition that left him trapped in spiraling thoughts of failure and hopelessness. He had dropped out of college not because he lacked intelligence, but because the pressure to work long hours and provide for his mother left him no time for studies. Each passing in his resentment grew, not just toward his circumstances, but toward a system he believed had failed him. As the crowd surged forward to catch a glimpse of the president's motorcade, Daniel's heart raced. He wasn't there to cheer or protest. In his pocket, he held a tattered notebook filled with scribbled grievances, each page a testament to his mental turmoil. His eyes darted toward a Secret Service agent stationed a few feet away. The agent's holstered firearm gleamed in the sunlight, and an idea, reckless, desperate, and fueled by despair, took hold. The motorcade arrived, and President Trump stepped out, waving to the crowd. Cheers and camera flashes erupted as he approached the barricades to greet supporters. Daniel pushed his way closer, clutching a pen and paper as though he were just another eager fan seeking an autograph. "Mr. President," Daniel called out, his voice trembling. Trump turned in his direction, a practiced smile on his face. For a moment, the chaos of the crowd fell away, and Daniel saw an opportunity. In a split-second decision, he lunged toward the Secret Service agent, grabbing the firearm from its holster. The weight of the gun in his hands felt surreal, but before he could aim it, the agents were on him. Daniel was tackled to the ground, the weapon wrenched from his grip. The crowd erupted in panic, and within moments, Daniel was handcuffed and dragged away, his face pressed against the cold pavement. "I'm sorry," he cried out repeatedly, his voice drowned by the chaos around him. News of the attempted attack spread like wildfire, dominating headlines and sparking debates about security, mental health, and the pressures faced by young Americans. Daniel was charged with attempted assassination and brought before a federal court just days later. The courtroom was packed, the atmosphere tense as cameras clicked and murmurs filled the air. Sitting alone at the defendant's table, Daniel looked small and broken. His mother, frail and in a wheelchair, had been brought to the trial despite her poor health. Tears streamed down her face as she watched her son, the weight of her guilt and helplessness etched into her expression. When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he stood shakily, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he began, his words heavy with regret. "I was angry, confused, and lost. My mom, she's all I have, and I failed her. I thought, if I did something drastic, maybe someone would finally listen." His gaze shifted to his mother, whose frail hands clutched a tissue. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." The courtroom fell silent as Daniel continued. "I know what I did was wrong, and I'll live with that shame forever. But if I could, I would tell President Trump, I'm sorry, not just for what I did, but for letting my pain blind me to the fact that he's a human being too." To everyone's surprise, the president's legal team submitted a request on Daniel's behalf, asking the court to allow a monitored meeting between Daniel and President Trump. After much deliberation, the judge granted the request under strict supervision. Days later, Daniel was escorted to a private room in the federal courthouse. President Trump sat at the head of the table, flanked by Secret Service agents. Despite the circumstances, Trump's demeanor was calm, almost curious. Daniel was led inside, his hands trembling. "Mr. President," he began, his voice cracking, "I don't deserve to be here, but thank you for letting me say this. I'm sorry for what I did. I wasn't thinking clearly, and I let my anger consume me." Trump leaned forward, studying the young man. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" he asked, his tone surprisingly soft. Daniel nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I've made so many mistakes, but I want to do better. I just didn't know how to ask for help." For a moment, Trump was silent. Then he said, "You're young, and life can be hard, but this doesn't have to define you. Use this as a turning point. Prove to yourself and to your mother that you can rise above it." The meeting ended with a handshake, a moment that would remain etched in Daniel's memory forever. Though his future was uncertain, that small act of understanding gave him a sliver of hope, a chance to rebuild, one step at a time.